Well, hello there, my dear children of the apocalypse. How are we doing today? Welcome back to the 52 Weeks of Self-Improvement and welcome to a topic on podcasts. I wanted to do this because I think a lot of people don't listen to enough podcasts, and the podcasts you might be listening to could potentially be bad. I don't think any of the podcasts I'm about to mention are podcasts that you don't already know or haven't heard of or haven't seen a clip from, but nonetheless, these are the 5 podcasts that I have personally been listening to, and I think everybody out there should give them a go. Number 1, without doubt, is the Andrew Huberman podcast. And it's a brilliant way to get information about science and science-related things for free. I mean, what this guy has brought to the internet is absolutely amazing. His story, in fact, is extremely interesting because he wasn't always, a smart, good kid. He actually has a really screwed up childhood in the process how he actually came to be a doctor or professor of neuroscience at Stanford University. I think that's where he's from. So brilliant podcast to get a lot of information about science, about your body, about sleeping. The guests he brings on the show are superb, and it really is a wholesome podcast and probably one of the most neutral individuals out there on the internet right now. Now, number 2, and one I really, really like because of the production value and because of the quality of the guests that come on there, is Stephen Barlow's Diary of a CEO. It's a brilliant collection of wonderful individuals that come on this podcast with well-presented answers. And it's also one of the podcasts that I think is hosted without any clips or shorts being made. So in fact, you're quite forced to watch the entire episode, which I think is a good thing. I think podcasts are a great way to get us into the state of long attention spans once again. For sitting there for 1, 2, 3 hours, or if you can't, you break it into bunches. Maybe 30 minutes of listening on the way to work, 2 hours of listening during lunch, and so on and so forth. So Stephen Barlow being the guy that was also in Shark Tank, so he's very interconnected, works with a lot of different businessmen, has a very wide idea of how actual companies work, and so presents them with this ability to get very good questions to his guests, which of course, like I said, are, they're just superb. Number 3 is a podcast you may not have heard of. This is probably one of the least known ones. It comes from England and it's called the StrikeItBig podcast, hosted by primarily Mark Tilbury and I believe his 2 sons and another guy. Anyway, I might have gotten it wrong, but StrikeItBig is brilliant because it's more focused around the monetary value, right? The cash, the income, the ways to get businesses, and the guys that come on there, the guests they have, they come from all shapes of sizes, but most of the debate really tends to be around how to create a platform, how to build, how to get your business grown up. And I think it's a brilliant way to expand the narrowness of most of us, because most of us, we've been brought into this world thinking that there's only one way to live, and that is to get a job and have a family. And these guys are doing their best to also present the outside world, the world of businessmen, the world of creativity, the world of really making something that perhaps to the naked eye isn't as obvious. I do absolutely recommend the StrikeItBig and also some of the other content they make on their other channels. The 4th podcast I recommend is the Rich and Roll podcast. And perhaps this is one of the most calm hosts, is one of the most calm episodes. It's one of those podcasts that perhaps I listen to not enough and I should consume more of it. It's because it's very laid back. It's very leisureful. It's very much oriented around lifestyle, more so than business and other problems. It really tries to tackle this livelihood ideology of how to live, how to be happy, how to be content, most importantly. And I think it fits this beautiful neutrality in the world of podcasts that so far I've mentioned, which you can probably realize are very self-improvement worthy. And again, the Rich Roll, also one that I like because the guy's an athlete, looks really good for his age, and all these things I think are important. You start to realize that you make these people your role models, you make these people an inspiration. It creates goals for you to sort of strive towards in your own future. Now, before we move on to the final 5th podcast, obviously a respectable mention has to be made of the Doomtime podcast, my own podcast. The idea of which is to connect with people I used to play War Thunder with, people that used to create War Thunder content, people that used to play War Thunder, and really all throughout learn about how it is that people went from gaming to now doing something completely different, how that happened, why it happened, and how their life has been going ever since. In 2024, I'm aiming to make this podcast the primary content of the channel, and the idea is to also perhaps bring on some fans, perhaps have conversations with the players, the viewers, yourself, but mostly is to get to learn as much about the gaming mind and how it can interact with the reality of the world. Where exactly the podcast is going to be headed is certainly unknown, but it is for sure something that is a personal project of mine, one I'm very passionate about, and it's conversations with individuals that I want to have on a weekly or at least a bi-weekly basis. So without further ado, the fifth podcast that I absolutely recommend is called the Chris Williamson's Modern Wisdom Podcast. And this one is, to me, one of my favorites because of the sheer articulation that Chris has, his ability to be eloquent, to have very interesting, very dynamic guests, to have beautiful, beautiful quotes that he reads to actual guests that perhaps they themselves have used. The shorts that you will see, the TikToks, the clips from his podcast are brilliant. They're filled with information. You can very quickly take them and utilize them and apply them in your own day-to-day life. What I really find interesting is actually Chris's background story, because this guy actually was a member, or a contestant, I should say, in one of the live shows that is the Love Island or Too Hot to Handle, something like that, right? There's these reality TV shows where they take a bunch of hot dudes and a bunch of hot girls and they put them onto a house on an island, and then they see what's going to happen. They give them a set of rules, right? And needless to say, these are not the types of shows that I'm interested in or that I would go watch, but I think it's incredible to see a person to come from that sort of environment and then use perhaps some of the fame that you do get from it, or a little bit of the boost, to go into a completely different direction and start having conversations with incredible individuals from all around the world. Long story short, I think everybody here should be listening, should be watching podcasts, should be consuming podcasts. In fact, I want to know, what are your favorite top 5 podcasts? Put them in the comment section below and I'd love to check them out. I think this is a great way to consume content. It's a great way to get work done whilst you're also learning something. And if not else, it can be way better than wasting your time consuming brainless, matterless, and unimportant content. So if you haven't yet, give podcasts a try. And for those of you who do listen to them, again, let me know what your favorites are in the comments below. Till next time, take care and safe flying.